Hi everyone, this is David from eCloud Valley's Managed Security Services team. Today I'd like to share how organizations can proactively identify potential risks in their environment before incidents happen by using security assessment. Next, I'll start with a very common security scenario that many enterprises face. First, I'll explain why most incidents don't happen overnight. Risks often build up over time within systems and applications, but simply go undetected. Then, I'll talk about why regulations around the world now emphasize continuous monitoring rather than one-time scans. Finally, through a few live demos, I'll show how security assessment helps organizations identify and manage potential risks in practice, from host vulnerability scanning and web scanning to actionable reporting and analysis. In reality, it's not that companies don't do security at all. Many organizations run a vulnerability scan once a year or bring in a consulting firm to scan the environment at the end of a project. After the scan, there is a report, usually a pretty thick one. And at first glance, it looks like everything has been thoroughly checked. But honestly, when we get back to day-to-day operations, only a small portion of those vulnerabilities actually get fixed. Some systems are already in production and are difficult to change. Others are left untouched because teams are unsure whether fixing them might impact the service. And in some cases, even after a fix is applied, no one goes back to confirm whether the vulnerability was fully remediated. Over time, the report just gets put aside, left on a desk, saved in a folder, and eventually forgotten. Months later, when someone looks at it again, the environment has already changed. But the risks that were identified back then are still there, unresolved and unmanaged. From what we see in real-world cases, many security incidents are not the result of sophisticated real-time attacks. More often, they happen because systems haven't been updated for a long time. Outdated services and ports are still exposed to the internet, or known vulnerabilities are simply left unaddressed. The truth is, these issues could have been identified long before an incident ever occurred. So the real problem is never about whether risks are visible. It's about whether organizations are proactively identifying them, and whether there is a continuous process to track and remediate them over time. We emphasize continuous security assessments for a simple reason. Risk doesn't appear just once. System changes or new services can introduce new vulnerabilities at any time. If you only scan once, many issues may surface after the assessment is done. The value of continuous testing is that it allows you to identify and reduce exposure before vulnerabilities are exploited, instead of reacting after something goes wrong. This is also closely tied to data security. What organizations truly worry about is data leakage, and ongoing assessments provide real visibility into the actual security posture of sensitive data. Finally, there's compliance. Regulations today don't just ask whether you've done a security scan once. They care whether you can prove that assessments are performed regularly and consistently with proper reporting. In short, continuous testing isn't about scanning more often. It's about keeping security, compliance, and risk under control. Today, security testing is no longer a question of should we do it. It's a must. Across different countries, cybersecurity and data privacy regulations clearly require regular assessments. Whether it's requirements for listed companies, data protection laws, or broader cybersecurity frameworks, the message is consistent. Organizations must regularly identify vulnerabilities and monitor accumulated risk. This isn't just about preventing external attacks. It's about understanding whether known vulnerabilities exist, whether critical systems are being assessed on an ongoing basis, and ensuring assessments aren't done just to produce a last-minute audit report. For example, ISO 27001 explicitly requires technical vulnerability management and continuous monitoring. In short, security assessment is now standard practice. It's not enough to say we've done it. Organizations need to provide evidence, how it's done, how often it's performed, and the current status of risk remediation. Many companies conduct security assessments, but the real difference lies in whether the findings turn into real action. That's why, when designing security assessment, our focus wasn't on scanning more targets, it was on making results practical and actionable. First, assessments must be continuous. Environments change daily, and a one-time scan quickly becomes outdated. Ongoing scanning ensures new services or configuration risks are identified before they grow into bigger issues. Second, the assessment aligns directly with compliance priorities, covering common vulnerabilities, OWASP Top 10, CVEs, API security, and more, so security testing also supports governance requirements. Third, reporting and management are automated. After each scan, reports, risk ratings, and historical records are generated automatically, giving both engineers and management clear visibility. Finally, when remediation gets complicated, expert support is available, not just a report, but guidance on what to fix first and how to fix it properly. In short, the value of security assessment isn't in producing a polished report, it's in turning security testing into a continuous, actionable governance process. Let's start with host vulnerability scanning. In real-world enterprise environments, many hosts are directly exposed and provide services that are accessible from the internet. The real challenge for administrators is this: it's very difficult to quickly tell which hosts are currently the most exposed and most likely to be attacked. With the host scanning results in Atlas, you can quickly identify which hosts carry higher risk, whether the risk comes from the operating system, service configurations, or known vulnerabilities. The focus here isn't on technical details. It's about giving you a clear, at-a-glance view of which hosts are under high-risk threats and need to be prioritized first. Next, let's look at web vulnerability scanning. Today's websites are no longer just static pages. They include web applications and APIs that are constantly running in production. The key question this demo answers is simple. Once a service is live, how do I know it's still secure? With the scan reports generated by Atlas, you can immediately see whether your website currently has common application level risks. Finally, this brings us to the compliance and governance perspective, which is often the top priority for many organizations. In Atlas, every scan record, the current status of identified vulnerabilities, and the entire remediation history are all preserved in a complete and traceable way. This information can be directly mapped to common security control requirements, such as those defined in ISO 27001. That means when organizations face management reviews or audits, they are no longer just saying, "Yes, we've done security scans." Instead, they can clearly demonstrate when assessments were performed, what was identified, how risks were tracked and handled, and where the current security posture stands. This is what allows security management to become something that is auditable, verifiable, and governed, not just claimed. When you look at it as a whole, what Atlas helps organizations do is actually quite simple. It enables you to identify potential risks in your environment early, organize them clearly, and establish a security assessment process that is continuous, manageable, and auditable. Because real security is never achieved through a single assessment, it comes from the ability to continuously see risks and continuously improve.